So you can go from this to this with our Bronze Bell Snare Drum One-Shots, which you can download for free in the description below. So today I'll show you how I use one-shot snare samples to add body, sizzle, space and impact to a real drum mix without replacing the whole drum sound. And I've put the samples I've used in the description below. They are totally free Bell Bronze snare samples from the 13x8 Tempest snare drum, which is from our newest drum library, the Bronze kit. You get center hits, rim shots and no wire samples with the original top mic, bottom mic, overheads and rooms. Download them, drop them in your favorite sampler and use them in your mix. Bell Brass drums have their own character, their own sound. It's really unique. You immediately recognize them for their hard smacking transients. That bell ring almost sounds like a church bell. And the way they project through a loud drum mix, right? That's why you always need a bell brass when you're doing rock or metal. So if your drummer doesn't have one and he doesn't have $3,000 laying around for just a snare, I'm not trying to fake a completely different drum kit. I'm using the samples like extra microphones. So in the session, I'm using 4 sampler tracks. In this case, I'm using trigger, but you can use your own favorite sampler, which triggers off of audio or MIDI, right? So we got a top fader, bottom for the sizzle, overheads for more space and rooms for even more space. So if you want to make this sound convincing, don't just throw on one sample and call it a day. Combine these one-shots with the original recording to just enhance the sound. Not completely replace it, but enhance the sound, yeah. So the top mic I use to add body. If I need more punch, I always go to the top mic. I can EQ it if I want to separately, add more high end. If you push up high end in your original snare mic, you'll be adding hi-hat because you always have hi-hat spill on that microphone, right? And if you don't want to gate that mic to death, then use samples, right? And because this is just a clean top mic hit, you can add as much high end if you want, or as much punch as you want without adding bass drum, tom, noise, stuff like that, right? Which live in these lower parts of the spectrum. So I always set these channels up with EQ, can be whatever you like, and a transient designer, sometimes a compressor. So I can make it fit even better with the original performance, right? So the bottom mic, I add if I need more high end, more sizzle, but I can make that longer or shorter if I want with a transient designer or with compression. Bottom mics give a lot of high end because of the wires, right? Don't push it all the way up if you don't want to make it sound like a 70s record. But if you just need a little bit more high end, try adding the bottom mic to cut through the high frequencies with the snare, if the snare is too dull, right? So overheads, add high end frequencies because the mics are further away, you have less proximity effect, right? So you add high frequencies, mid frequencies and space. If you recorded your drum kit in a bedroom, you probably don't have really spacious overheads, right? Or rooms for that matter, but that's the next one. So use these to add a little bit of room to your snare drum. Toms, kicks do really well with just closed mics. You really get a modern sound with just closed mics on these drums. Only using closed mics in a mix with snare drums, really sounds way too dry to my taste anyway. So not only it will add high frequencies if you need it, it will also add room width. That's what you need on the snare. And a snare, to me, snare drums sound way more natural in overheads than in whatever mic there is, because you're never stuck with your head to a snare drum, right? You'll be deaf if you do it, but you know what I mean? You never listen to a snare like that. You need the closed mics for the punch and the bottom mic for the brightness, but you need good overhead sound to make it sound natural. Yeah, if you want it to sound fake in the first place, yeah, okay, there are no clear rules on this, right, for your music, but if you're looking for a natural sounding snare drum hit, then be heavy-handed on overheads. If you have a drummer that bashes the cymbals, so you have to put down these overheads, which happens a lot, that's where these kind of samples come in, right? Yeah, you can add back snare in the overhead without pumping these cymbals that he was bashing, right? Get the idea? Acoustic drum recordings, the sound of it is always determined by the balance between all the mics, right? And really determined by how the drummers played it. If one thing is really loud in the overheads, yeah, that can really up your mix. And that's always really difficult to get right in a mix if it's not played right. So, not to make this a 3-hour video about room mics and overheads, but get it right at the source, right? If you're recording the drums and it's at that point in time it feels like imbalanced, and you put up the overheads and something screams at you, the rest is balanced, yet do the takeover. Do it again and record it properly. It will give you a lot less headache in the mix. Okay, so on room mics, same thing, but with even more width to it, more tail. So the room mic, yeah, these are like an extension to the overheads, right? Okay, if you need more space, you need more width, use these rooms. Another cool trick, a really old trick, is don't use reverb on the real recorded snare, on the top mic or on the bottom for that matter. Use it on the samples. You can see here I put on all these samples and blended the taste. Right now it's just on, but these are just clean snare hits, no hi-hats, no other coming in there which can trigger this reverb. Just snare hit and use the reverb on the samples, not on the actual recording. But the downside to one-shots is that they're not deep layered, right? They're just, what's in the name, a one shot, one hit pop. So if you mix them too loud and the drummer does a fill, this can sound unnatural. So always be wary about that and use automation to duck it when they need to duck out of the way for the fills. You can do tricks like that to make it sound natural. So they're great for adding punch and higher end, but not that great to replace every ghost note in a recording, right? Yeah. So the free Bronze Bell Snare One-Shots are in the description. Download them, try them in your mix. And in the next video, I'll show you the Bronze Kit Trigger 2 expansion pack, where you get layers and round robins and a much more detailed way to trigger this snare drum.